Ladies and gentlemen, bear with us one moment. We will take one of our panelists.
1 minute.
And if she pops in now, you may have to attend the chair, but for now. Chair. Hello and good afternoon to you all. Welcome to this press event where the church is going to make a press statement regarding the current political issues, starting from maybe November, pre-November, during and post. So the church, through the Zimbabwe Divine Destiny, will make a press statement shortly, and to do that here is the Executive Director of the Zimbabwe Divine Destiny, Bishop Magaya, Bishop Anselm Magaya. He's flanked by the Harare Zimbabwe Divine Destiny Provincial Chairman, Reverend Guthrie Gwanzuka. We're still expecting 2 more guests who were out of town. But in the interest of time, I think we may have to proceed because Bishop will make this press statement, and then if they pitch up, then we take it up from there. So before I hand over to Bishop, may I suggest that we don't interrupt soon after the press statement, then we will have an opportunity for more questions. Seek clarity. My name is Shad Chaparaza. I'm the PR for Zimbabwe Divine Destiny. So I'm facilitating this for the moment. So over to you, Bishop.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, it is very important for us to have an understanding that the church is releasing this statement in this very important historical context in January 2018, a period that normally the church commits to prayer and fasting. And according to what the Bible says, it is very important that when we give of ourselves to God in prayer and fasting, we are able to also sense what God says. And what we're going to be presenting here, therefore, has to do with the manner in which we have to respond to the current issues, even as we are praying and fasting as a church. Now, we note with interest, ladies and gentlemen, the recent developments that have brought some changes to the face of government, with President Mnangagwa taking over from his predecessor. Some changes pertaining to access to health for the vulnerable groups, and other promises that appear to deal with excessive common in the previous Mugabe system have been made. In other words, we have heard the incumbent, giving indications that he might want to actually depart from what we have actually known before. We therefore commend President Mnangagwa for realizing the need for change. However, the nation, particularly the church, still expects a real paradigm shift in the entire government system if at all we are going to see real change. The church implores the nation, particularly the new government, to seriously introspect on the events of the last 1.5 months, November, which culminated in the dethronement of former President Mugabe and subsequently the inauguration of the incumbent, President Mnangagwa, with a view to transparently account for all lives affected by the army's operation. There is no doubt this exercise came against the background of protracted, bitter wrangling of factions within the ZANU-PF party, which hitherto had been characterized by dismissals, expulsions, excommunications, and in some cases attempts on rivals' lives. It is also important to note that throughout all these wranglings, governmental structures, ministries, government departments, senior officers, and workers had now become enmeshed in the dispute. We were made to understand that these tense moments that actually gripped the nation, with the army moving heavy artillery, for example, tankers out of barracks, and scores of soldiers besieging critical government institutions, as well as houses of significant persons, including the Blue Roof, was a bloodless act. This is what we were made to understand. However, alleged reports of gunfights, of gunshots were actually heard at the former Minister Ignatius Chombo's house, leading to the shooting of security details. At least 3 were heard, as well as the arrest, according to the army statement, of criminals surrounding the then President Mugabe. Many outstanding senior ZANU-PF G40 faction loyalists ran for cover. Others were caught, others escaped the country. It is our fervent belief, ladies and gentlemen, as a church, to understand that for any nation or any new dispensation that wishes to turn a new leaf ought to start well by gaining trust through transparency and truth-telling. It is therefore incumbent upon the new government to account and to openly disclose the whereabouts of every victim of this macabre moment. The recent harassment and arrest of and alleged torture of the youth activists who demonstrated on the Gugura Hundi issue when President Mnangagwa visited Bulawayo is a clearest indication that the ZANU-PF-led government still struggles to adhere to constitutionalism. The youths were within their constitutional rights by actually showing their displeasure at such an occasion, and this was not violent a protest at all. President Mnangagwa ought to be reminded that the nation is yearning for a complete departure from Mugabeism, where repression and oppression were the order of the day, and this is his litmus test. We acknowledge the fact that the army concluded their Operation Restore Legacy by moving out and back to barracks. However, like any other operation, the nation would have expected a thorough and well-tabulated report of the outcome of their exercise, given that there have been unconfirmed reports of several members of different government security departments, for example, the CIO and perhaps the army, who have been held up during the exercise in some army barracks or prison elsewhere. So obviously we would want to know how the army has concluded this. Who, for example, have been arrested. The church cannot keep quiet as these matters of justice and peace cum national development. How can we want to move forward when their blood, if so, is crying? God will ask, where are thy brothers? And we dare not respond like Cain, because everybody made in his image matters. How can we move forward when certain families are restless due to their loved ones' disappearance, and the likes of Itai Zamara and others are cases in point? We refer Comrade Mnangagwa to the chilling and touching story of Maitongo, in which she was not allowed to visit the site of her husband's death for all these years, and we all felt for her. How then, in the same light, do we commit such similar crimes? Owning up and telling the truth will help the people to deal with loss, leading to forgiveness, therefore stopping the rumor mill, and will be credited with integrity. Ultimately, God will forgive your government, Mr. President, as well as our nation.